It's Don here from the board. Thanks for checking out this video. Thanks for coming along and checking out this video. Wow, just complete not thinking there. So today I'm going to be checking out another soldering iron. I've looked at a lot of soldering irons, but you know what? We use soldering irons a lot in mechanical keyboards, so it's pretty important to be able to pick a good one, a right one, affordable one that will really do the job. So let's get down to the desktop. Alrighty, click and click. Okay, so here it is. This is the SanErYiGo SH72 D24 soldering iron. Now I bought this from Banggood on pre-order and it came super quick, so I don't quite understand what they call pre-order. The other thing that was really weird about this one is that their pre-ordering system's really weird, and I'm going to show you what I mean. So this has been listed for a while and it kind of cycles and comes back available for pre-order, and then it falls off and then it comes back again. And of course I'll have a link below so you can check it out if you want to and you think this iron is worthwhile getting. But so this is the listing, and the pre-orders go up in price the more people buy them. I would have normally thought that it tends to go the other way, because if more people buy it, it gets cheaper. But it means you should get in early because it'll actually be cheaper. Okay, so right now it's showing that it's $12 US for a temperature adjustable soldering iron. Now it doesn't come with a power supply, and I'll sort of talk about it in a moment, but you'll see it comes with a couple of different varieties of tip options, and through the pictures, you know, it looks like a TS100 clone, but with an analog control, not a digital control. Okay, but you know, at $12 US, it's pretty affordable, right? If it works, if it does what it should do. Now, these tips do not look like TS100 tips. So, you know, you will potentially be looking at a different ecosystem, but we'll check it out when we actually open up this package and have a look at it. So there's the box, same thing that I've got. And I can't remember which tip I opted for, but we'll find out when we get to it. So it's meant to be 220 to 400, as you can see, and it uses the 5525 plug, which is the same as the TS100. And you know, the voltage that you put into it will depend on, sorry, the power that you get out of it depends on the voltage that you put into it. Now I'm going to be using a 12 volt supply, which is the same that I normally get to use for my TS100 when I was using it, which is this thing. It's just an external hard drive power supply, like an external dock supply. So we're going to be looking at approximately 18 watts of power. So you should get a tip, you get a manual. These look actually like the mini KSGER one that I reviewed a couple of weeks back, that it had really long tips that went all the way through. So we'll see if it actually is that or not. Yeah, so nothing too weird and wacky out there, but we will be checking out how this performs. So let's get back to the desktop and let's cut this packet open. So yeah, it came pretty quick, to be honest. So they must have had stock locally in Australia, but I don't understand why they call it a pre-order and why the pre-order prices as just it goes up as the volume of pre-orders go up. I don't know, maybe they believe it's a demand thing, because if there's more demand, then they can charge you more. Alright, so let's just put some of that wrapping away. Now is this a push out? Okay, so that's a push out, and there's your manual. There's a really long tip, and it looks like I've got a chisel tip with that. Does it have a marking on it to tell me which one it is? So it is the D24. Z48 is what it has on the engraving. I don't know if that's gonna, there we go. So SHD24Z48 is the tip. So that's all right. Let's have a quick flip through the manual. It's pretty much just everything that is on the website. Nothing too crazy, nothing unexpected. Okay, so now I've got my TS100 here, so we can actually put it as a side-by-side comparison, and you'll see, the tip is very different in terms of its end length. The collar positions, though, are same kind of distance, so they will not be compatible. In regards to the handle, you can see they're very similar length, and well, if I take that, it fits right down that same barrel diameter, right? So that's something. And compared to the TS100, which has the buttons for your control with the actual digital control, this just has a dial. It actually has... Okay, so it was clicking, but I can actually feel indents on them. So when you rotate it, it sort of wants to sit into certain positions. Yeah. So that's interesting. Now, if we have a closer look to it, there is just some sort of surface etched branding on it. So it's got the company brand there and the model, the SH72, and it says the voltage supply there. On the other side, it's completely blank. Now this is a much more sort of triangular arrangement to it, whereas the TS100 and the TS80 are a lot more sort of round and barreled. Okay, so that's, weight-wise, they're about the same. A little bit heavier on that. It's meant to be 60 grams, but, it's not really that much of a deal once you actually get the tip in. And this is meant to be a lock collar, so I can unscrew that. I'm not quite sure how it locks. Am I supposed to put that in? Yeah, okay, so that goes all the way in, and then I put that down, and that locks the collar in place. Of course, you probably should rotate your tip to your preferred position and angle before you lock that collar in. So I'm just going to have it so that angle is flat if I was to work it in. In terms of balance, well, it's not too bad actually. Well, so it's sort of sitting just at the back of that. Yeah, so it's just sort of on the back of these sort of grip dots that they've actually put on the barrel. All right. Okay, so let's just put my 100 away and see what happens when we fire up this $12 soldering iron. Now what I've actually got here is that temperature control, not temperature, the calibration tool, right? So we can see, it's saying it's about 27 degrees right now based upon what temperature that is running through the current here. Okay, so we can plug this in and we'll check that out as well. Now I'm expecting that this is probably going to smoke a bit when I first plug it in, as most new electronics of this nature have a habit of doing. So I've got a little desk fan here, and let's put that on so that we can just not choke on the smoke. And the power plug, there we go, so that's the 5225, and let's just set this to the lowest temperature at the moment, which funnily enough it won't even click over to, so the dial itself won't go to the lowest setting. So if I raise that all the way up and try and get the focus on it, you'll see it's kind of got some etched, well, it's 200, so it says 220 is the lowest, right? So that kind of works, and then it rotates all the way around to what's meant to be 440. So each one of those ticks is approximately 20 degrees. So let's go all the way down to the lowest that it'll go, and hope nothing blows up or I don't get electrocuted. Okay, so I plugged that in. There is power. There's nothing at all on this to tell me that it's on. There's no light indicator, and you know, that's a hazard. That's a hazard. Now I'm just going to let that sit there and see what's going to happen to it and how it warms up. Doesn't seem like it's smoking yet, but it could be quite slow to ramp up to that temperature. There's nothing really. If I just take that away, I can feel heat coming off that now. Maybe I should hold it and not just leave it in the stand. So now the solder will melt around 280-ish is my memory, roughly. So if I actually, let's just turn the fan off for the moment because it doesn't seem to be smoking. If I get my solder, I can start to smell the hot metal now. It is starting to smoke now, so it's okay. So at 220, it's actually melting the solder at 220. That's interesting. Okay, so just checking how far up the tip. This section up here is not really. It is hot enough to melt it, and it's not hot enough on the main barrel, so just the tip, but it's only holding solder right down where that exposed section is. So let's clean that off now that I've sort of tinned it roughly, and let's see what we're experiencing. Okay, so about 216, 217, 218, 219. That's actually remarkably good. I'm actually quite impressed with that. 220, 219, 220. Okay, very, very good. All right, so let's rack this up to, let's go to 300. So I'm going to be very careful holding this so I don't burn myself, but I've now just adjusted that to just under 300. So let's try and get that to sit on 300 on the line. Okay, so it's starting to smoke up a bit. The rosin's burning off. Flux in the core is burning off. Alright, so let's maybe get some fresh solder here. And 302, 303, 304, 305. It's climbing. Stabilizing about 308, 309, 308. Okay, so you know what? That's actually really, really good. That level of tolerance for an analog control, that's actually pretty good. So let's go up to 400. Now, I generally don't work at 400 unless if I'm desoldering lead-free solder. If it's leaded solder, I'll normally work at about 350. I only sort of go up to that 400 point when I'm working with lead-free solder because it does need that high temperature to really get it working, and you can see how much it's really burning off that rosin very, very quickly. Okay, so the temperature on the probe's now come down again, and let's get some fresh solder. It's bubbling away. 395, 6, 7, 8, 99, 400. Look at that, stable at 400. That is 401. That is absolutely amazing. Wow, I'm super impressed with this iron right now. And then let's go all the way up, 440. 440 hertz B flat. Okay, once again, let's get some fresh solder. All this rosin smoke's probably not doing my lungs any favors, but you know what? That's okay. All in the name of review science. Let's get some fresh onto that. .442, 43, 44, 45, 46, 447, 40. Is it going to hit 480? Have we got a 480? 449? No? 448. Okay. 449. Rightio. So, 450. Wow. I mean, probably getting to the point of actually cooking that solder real good. And also, I don't know how long you're meant to or not meant to hold onto those probes. I think it's actually melting the plastic underneath it, which is obviously, look at that, it's hot enough that I can just put fresh solder onto it and it melts itself. Wow. Alright, so I'm just going to dial this back and let's see how it reacts to a temperature reduction and cooling off, because it's really important to know, like if you're going to be working at a high temperature and you're going to bring it down because you want to start soldering instead of desoldering, then what are we looking at? So I'm just going to let that sit in the brass sponge to just sap some of that heat away. So we know that the calibration on this thing, actually from analog perspective, is pretty good. Like, it's getting up to the 400s and holding it, and it's quite stable, which is really, really good. It's quite close, you know, within 5 to 10 degrees for most part of it. I'm very, very impressed. Okay, so let's just tin that. Let's take some of that, knock off some of that heat. Alright, and then let's reflow some of that. And 218, 219, 220. Look at that, holding 220 very stable. Wow. For a $12 iron, this thing is amazing. I'm flabbergasted at how well this thing performs. Whew. Yeah, compared to the TSGR one, the TS12 one that I reviewed the other week, I'm not getting any heat issues through this handle either. Now, sure, I haven't had it on as long, but I suspect it's because I'm also running at 18 watts, because I'm only putting 12 volts across it, so it's a much lower power rating compared to if I put in 24 volts and it was running at 65 watts. Now that mini TS12 iron came with its own power supply, which I think was supplying, 24 volt to it, which is probably why it was generating a lot more heat. Now, depends on how many switches you want to hit in a row before you want it to, rebuild the heat, and how fast it's pumping out that heat. Do you really need 24 volts on it? I've had zero issues using my TS100 at 12 volts, and I would expect to have zero issues using this also at 12 volts. And it seems to be, doing an absolute superb bang up job at doing what it says. Now, I'm just going to pull the power supply off that so it can start to cool down, because I don't really need to do any additional soldering with it right now. And I'm just going to use the residual heat to re-tin the tip so that it has a bit of a protective coat on the tip. Okay. Alrighty. So it feels quite lightweight, and it feels like it could probably break. This dial is probably my biggest concern because it feels kind of flimsy. If it does come off, then I don't know how you would potentially fix that. This whole assembly looks to be press fit, and if that comes apart, because you can see there's a seam that runs down the back here and it runs along the front, and then it runs up the top, which is where that sort of mark is. You could probably get something like a pry tool in there and pop it off, but you know, this wheel itself is quite lightweight, and I would be concerned about accidentally breaking that. If you are able to make sure that that doesn't happen, you store it correctly and you handle it correctly, this could be a fantastic investment. Now, a TS100 runs around 40-50 US. Can get it as low as 30 something during on sales. A TS80 costs a little bit more than that these days. TS80 is probably sitting around a 50 to 70 US depending on sales and where you get it from. So if you can get an ecosystem of tips for these without any issue, and at $12 if you get it on, you know, one of their pre-orders at the cheapest price, you could get 4 of these for the same price as like a TS100. You could order 4 of these with 4 different tips, and then you've got backup bodies and you've got a full range of tips for the same price as a TS100. Now, that's an amazing bargain if you want to think about it. If you're going to be setting up a lab, if you're going to be having workshops, these are super small, super compact, quite comfortable to hold. You just need to somehow figure out your power supply, right? But that's no different to if you had a TS100 to deal with anyway. So I had very little expectations on how well this guy would perform, and my expectations have been completely blown away by how well it's actually performed for $12. So there's the SH72 soldering iron from SanErYiGo. DS24 I think is the tip that I obviously requested. Let's just scroll back up on the listing and check out if the 24 is the, yeah, so 24 is that flat chisel as opposed to the K. So wow. Now, you know, its full price is $20 supposedly. Even at $20 and you got 2 of these compared to a TS100, it's really hard to beat. It's really hard to beat. If you don't need custom heating profiles like a TS100 offers, then definitely check out this iron. Definitely check this out. Okay, well, you might see me use this for a couple of, you know, soldering related videos in the future, just to give it a bit more of a burl so I can submit my thoughts on it if people want to ask me about it later. But right now, I would say this is like a solid 7.5 out of 10, and I would recommend this without any issues, just based on what we saw today. Whew. Just turn that back on. It's getting a bit warm in here now, generating a lot of heat coming off that as well. Well, thank you very much for coming along and checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And as I said, I'm going to have a link to the product below so you can check it out yourself. I did buy this 100% myself, so you know, there's no obligation upon me from anyone about my opinions on this piece today. And yeah, hit that like button, hit that share button, hit that subscribe button as well if you like the kind of stuff you see here on this channel. So, as usual, until next time, happy clacking.